WP Speed Fix. In this video, we're going to talk about fixing a slow WooCommerce checkout. We have this post on our website, how to fix a slow WooCommerce checkout, 9 easy steps. We probably have more than 9 steps in this now, but let me talk you through it. I'll try and keep the video as short as possible. I try not to get too technical, but it is a technical problem, so bear with me if it gets too technical. And if you have any questions, you can ask in the comments and we'll come back and clarify. So let me just talk through. I'll put these in the show notes. These are kind of our bullet points of what we're going to talk through. So let's get started. So here's the link to the article on our website if you want a lot of detail there. But the first one is obvious, and it's one we come across all the time. You've got to use good hosting. We see so many customers come through at WP Speedfix and they have WooCommerce problems and they're just on bad or underpowered hosting. So at the most basic level, the difference between good hosting and bad hosting is probably akin to the price of a cup of coffee versus the cost of a nice lunch. Typically for WooCommerce hosting, if we were going to recommend you a host, probably Cloudways, Seaways.net would be the host to go with. The reason why is because they're very good value in terms of price for performance. There's a lot of configuration options there, but there are also there's a lot of guardrails in place. So you get the power of a VPS server with kind of a managed service as well. And they have a bunch of add-ons that will help make managing the site easier. Things like automated patching with AI. So if you want to check that out, go to cloudways.net or seaways.net, And we have this post on our website about the fastest WooCommerce host, the host we typically recommend on top of Cloudways. So check that out. But you've got to use good hosting. So start with that. If your hosting is costing you $2 or $5 a month, it's probably just not good enough and it's time to upgrade. Pretty straightforward, but it's kind of, we say it, time and time again, and probably half the customers we see are just on hosting that isn't good enough for what they're looking to do. So that's out of the way. Let's talk about high performance auto storage. So WooCommerce is pretty old now, but it was kind of hacked into WordPress. WordPress was never really designed for e-commerce in the first place. So a lot of the e-commerce features originally with WooCommerce were just shoved into the posts table in the database. So the same database table as just the normal posts or pages in WordPress. That's a problem when you start to scale up because that database table was never really designed for managing e-commerce. So in a recent version of WooCommerce, they introduced something called high performance auto storage. So this splits out those database tables related to the WooCommerce e-commerce functions, so products, orders, customers, out into their own tables, which makes things so much faster. So there is a link there to the WooCommerce website with more details on it. There it is there, and there's a lot of technical detail there. But basically there's a setting in the WooCommerce settings under advanced features where you can turn it on. Now to use it, all your plugins have to be compatible with it. So if you have plugins that are out of date, they're probably not going to be compatible and you need to update them. It will say here in this screen inside your WooCommerce installation which plugins are problematic. So it's a pretty straightforward process of either updating those plugins if they're out of date or going and talking to the plugin vendor and finding out when they're going to support it, if they support it, or what the story is. Once you're good to go, you turn this on and it needs to synchronize the orders from the post table into the new high performance storage table. So once that's done, then you can fully enable it and you'll get a significant speed boost in the cart, in the checkout, my account area, and anything in the back end related to managing products or customers or orders. Basically all the e-commerce stuff will be significantly faster. So if you're kind of getting a 2 to 5 second load time when you're messing around with orders and managing orders, you probably drop that at least in half. We'd seen sites go from 3 seconds to maybe 1 second load time on orders in the back end just by making that change. The reason being is the database tables are more optimized and it splits them out from the post table. It just makes it faster and better for any of the e-commerce features. So that's high performance auto storage. That's a free optimization, so super easy to do. It's not that technical either, so you can DIY that for the most part, depending on how complex your WooCommerce install is. The next one is kind of similar. It's another essentially free optimization and is going to be more important if you have an older WooCommerce site. So there is a post I've linked to on our website about optimizing your database. So there's a bunch of things in this post, but this is the one we're really talking about here. So just for some kind of basic background, and you can see in these images here. So basically WooCommerce or WordPress uses uses MySQL database, and MySQL database uses 2 different formats for or two different storage engines for the database tables. So if you think of the database tables as files, so the older format is MyISAM. So with this type of, or this format of storage engine, only one write can be happening to the database at a time. So the writes basically queue up and wait in a queue. So if you're getting a lot of checkouts, a lot of things are happening on the site, a lot of people adding to cart, those modifications to the database will start to queue up, and they might take a second or two. There might be some delay there depending on how busy your site is. With the newer, well, it's not so new anymore, but with the Innodb storage engine or format, the database table is not locked while those writes are happening. Only the row in that database table is locked. So multiple writes to the table can be happening at once. So if you have a busy site, or even a moderately large site that, or medium-sized site that people are adding to the cart all the time, checking out all the time, a busy site essentially, it makes a significant difference to anything that is modifying the site or writing to the database. It's kind of like, the older format is kind of like having an Excel document that you have to email around and only one person can edit it at a time. The newer Innodb format is more like a Google Sheet where you can have multiple people working on it at once. So that's kind of like a good metaphor for the difference. There is some detail in this post here. We use this plugin called ServeBolt Optimizer. It's from the hosting company ServeBolt, but it gives you a really easy way, basically a one-click optimization or one-click fix for this problem. So it will convert the database tables, and it will also add indexes to a couple of the tables, which will speed them up as well. Before you do this, make sure you have a backup. It's pretty risk-free. We've rarely had it go wrong. If you have a very, very big database, it may be problematic. Or if your hosting is slow and getting hammered, then it could be a problem as well, because it does work the database hard when it changes that format. But if your database is 1 or 2 gig, it should be okay. But make a backup first. That's what we're saying. So make sure you're doing it in off-peak times. Make sure you have a backup first. But it's a pretty easy optimization. It makes a huge difference. Similar to the high-performance auto storage, it'll probably drop the load time for things in half, if not more, if you're using the older format. Now, if you have an old site, if the site is 5 years old, 10 years old, you'll definitely, and no optimization has been done, you'll definitely have some, or maybe all of the tables will be that older format. So it's a really easy one. It's a free optimization. It's very quick to do. And if you're a little bit technical, you can DIY that one as well. So that's that. That's optimizing the database. So we covered that. Get object caching in place. So object caching is a type of database cache essentially. So again, it'll speed up any operations that are related to the database. So that's adding to cart, adding to wish list, checkout, things in the back end again with managing orders and things like that. So it's not as big an impact as those last two optimizations, but it will make a difference for a busy site. So there's two parts to getting object caching in place. So the first is the hosting has to support it. So the hosting has to have an object caching engine, or the application that supports object caching. So there's two, there's Redis and Memcache. So those are the two server level applications that are needed to have object caching. Redis is the more popular one, and you'll see that around. Cloudways supports Redis. Other managed hosts like WP Engine, Kinsta, they both have Redis as well. I think Kinsta's a paid add-on. So you need to have, the hosting needs to support that or have that application installed, and then you need to use an object caching plugin on the site. And again, Cloudways, I think on any of the servers that are over 10 or 20 bucks a month, they have Redis and a pro version or paid version of an object caching plugin, and it will make a difference for anything database related. So that's an important one, especially for a busy site, or if you have a lot of checkouts taking place at once or in very short intervals. The next one, you have to have a CDN in place. So content delivery network. So if you're not familiar, content delivery network is a network of servers around the world that serve up part or all of the website. So we use and recommend Cloudflare. So Cloudflare has a free plan. So even on the free Cloudflare plan, it will make a difference to the site speed. It makes a difference in a few different ways. So one, it brings, because they have, I think Cloudflare has 160 or 200 locations now. So it hosts the website or some of the website closer to the visitor. So you kind of remove you do remove the impact of geography on site speed. So anytime traffic has to cross an ocean, so if I'm in Australia loading a site from the US, if all of that data has to come from the US, there's probably a 1 second, maybe 2 seconds delay just due to the distance. So a CDN solves that problem because the assets are hosted in Australia, so the distance is much shorter, so I get a shorter load time. The other thing which is more important in relation to the checkout is we're moving the workload, the work that the hosting has to do, off the hosting and onto Cloudflare's network. So we kind of move this a certain amount of workload the site needs to do, and what we're doing by using the CDN is moving that workload onto Cloudflare's network. Even on the free plan, it'll do that. We would recommend using this paid add-on called APO, Automatic Platform Optimization. It's kind of a stupid name, but there's two options for it. It's $5 a month, or it's available on the $25 a month plan. It has a whole bunch of other stuff on it. This used to only be available on their $200 a month plan. So at $5, it's an absolute steal. What it does basically, it caches the entire page, or all of the pages on the site, on the Cloudflare network. So you're moving much more of the workload from the hosting onto Cloudflare, or off the hosting. And it has some intelligence built in. That's why it's APO for WordPress. So once the user starts adding something to the cart, starting the checkout process, or doing things that a logged in user does, it will automatically disable this APO service, and it will fetch the page or the HTML from the hosting. So it is WordPress aware, and it's very, very intelligent. And it can work with WooCommerce without screwing up the caching or some problems that you might have had in the past in relation to caching. So very important. There's some other things that we use Cloudflare for. I'll talk about it in a minute. Cloudflare does CDN, it does DNS hosting, and it does firewall and security. So we use Cloudflare to also stop a lot of brute force attacks against a WooCommerce site. So typically, a WordPress site may have 1,000 to 10,000 brute force attempts per day, which is huge. And especially a WooCommerce site is going to attract much more, because it's kind of like, if someone can break into the site, they can get things like Stripe keys, user details. It's a much richer kind of environment, or much richer site to hack. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so that's CDN. So Cloudflare with APO is our recommendation there. Use the highest version of PHP your site can support. So PHP is the programming language that WordPress and WooCommerce runs on top of, and every version is faster than the last one. It's more efficient with memory. It just performs better. So you want to use the highest version of PHP that your site can support. Right now, it's July 2024, and PHP 8.3 is currently the highest version, or the newest version. So if you're on PHP 7.4, 8.0, moving up to the next version, if the site supports it, will increase performance. And these are big performance boosts, 10, 20%, maybe 30%, depending on how big a jump of the version is. It's a bit more technical, and if you have older plugins that don't support the latest version, you will break things. So you need to be careful there. There are different plugins and tools that can test this. So we have some links in the post on our website about this. You probably want a web developer to do it, because it is a bit more technical. It's not really one you want to DIY, and things can break under the bonnet that you don't notice. Like certain functionality just might not work. We might start getting 502 or 504 errors for certain things. So you want to be careful with this one. It's not one you just YOLO into. It does need some testing first. Okay, next one, set up security. So we just talked about this Cloudflare firewall rules. We have this post on our website. I'll actually load it up. I'll just find it for you. WP Speed Fix, Cloudflare. There we go. Cloudflare firewall rules. And I'll link to this in the post. Here we go. So we use the firewall rules inside Cloudflare to block SEO crawlers and bots. So you see this stuff here about blocking SEMrush and Ahrefs and Open Site Explorer, and also to show capture message on the login page. So that'll stop brute force attempts. Those SEO crawlers can be really, quite abusive to WooCommerce sites. They can add and remove things to the cart very rapidly, multiple times per second, and chew up a lot of server resources. So we typically block them. It also stops competitors seeing things about your site and giving away SEO information. But we'll link to that post there as well, and that will show you how to do that. That one is DIYable, and it's pretty straightforward. Just follow the screenshots, and that'll, particularly if you're getting a lot of brute force attacks, that'll help boost the performance quite a bit. The other thing we do for WooCommerce sites is use Wordfence. So Wordfence, even the free version, will pick up a lot of WooCommerce and WordPress specific security stuff that other firewalls won't. So even if your hosting has a firewall and you're using Cloudflare, Wordfence will filter a lot of the other garbage as well. So it's very good at that, and even it will do it even on the free version. So that's worth doing as well. And that one you could probably DIY. It's pretty straightforward. It's not super technical. Okay, the next one. So on the checkout page, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens with with shipping and payment plugins. So you want to be using the latest version of shipping and payment plugins. Sometimes the checkout will be slow simply because there is a payment plugin or a shipping plugin that is making some sort of API call to a third party, or to dialing back home to do some processing or calculate shipping costs, and it's just slow. So updating those to the latest version may help in some cases, and especially if you've got shipping plugins are probably the main culprit here, because they tend to go out of date or not be updated for a long time, because shipping companies don't really change APIs. So that's probably the one to be more mindful of, but both of them can be slow. In the troubleshooting section here, there's a note here to use Query Monitor to troubleshoot issues, and this plugin is a really good way of seeing what's happening under the bonnet with page loads. So typically, if we run through this list and we still have a slow checkout, using Query Monitor can uncover errors and problems and slowness around those plugins. So if you still have issues with the checkout after running through this, installing Query Monitor, and then there's a link there to it, it's a free plugin, and then just running through the cart and checkout, it may uncover what's happening with those shipping and payment plugins. And quite often you'll find that one of them is really slow. Very often, like I said, shipping plugins are the problem. And sometimes it's a case of you need to change shipping plugin. It's just old and slow and it hasn't been updated, or it's using an old API, or it's sending and receiving too much data. So we'd probably use those hand in hand, so updating those to the latest version, and then just using Query Monitor just to see what's happening under the bonnet with the checkout. There's a couple of other kind of further troubleshooting steps we'd recommend, that the kind of general ones. So we have a WordPress speed test tool. We call it SiteSpeedBot, sitespeedbot.com. Here it is. Here's a test. This is just a test that somebody ran today. So this is what it looks like, and it will give you all kind of the usual speed metrics, but it also gives you detailed recommendations on what you need to do to solve some of these problems, like lazy loading, for example. It also gives you SEO recommendations. So here, a detected a resource sent to a not secure URL, so that's a problem. What else? There's some SEO recommendations here as well. So it'll dig into kind of general stuff about WordPress speed and give you recommendations. If you want to dig into checkout speed in more detail, our Vital Signs Tracker app will track all the Core Web Vitals data for every session on your website. You can find out more information here at wpspeedfix.com/vital-signs-tracker. And there's a demo video there as well of how it works and what it does. Here's a quick kind of overview. So it gives you the kind of high level site speed insights. So you can see here, this one is just failing the LCP Core Web Vitals metric with 2.8 seconds. This is in milliseconds. It needs to be on the 2.5 seconds. But if we scroll down, where the real juicy stuff is I think this is a new client we just brought on board the guys are working on. It has country by country breakdown of the speed, and it also has page by page breakdown. So you'll see here it has checkout and cart on my account. I don't know if there's cart there. And you can see here the time to first buy, the LCP, and all the other metrics. And it will also tell you whether a page is indexable or not indexable. So it means whether those pages will show up in Google. And the cart and checkout and my account pages should be no index. So they should be X like that, not indexable. But this is a good way of kind of breaking down the speed and seeing what's happening on the checkout. This time to first buy is pretty typical for what we'd see with a checkout page. If we start to see this up at the 5 or 10 second range, there's definitely something going wrong under the bonnet, but that's a pretty typical kind of speed there we'd expect to see for the checkout page. The LCP is a bit on the high side, so there's some work to do there, and same with the CLS. So that's Vital Signs Tracker, Query Monitor we talked about, and then probably server logs would be the last one. So just checking the server logs, so the PHP log to make sure there's no errors or problems happening. If there's things going wrong under the bonnet, they'll appear there in the error logs, and they might not appear anywhere else. We'd also look at the logs and just check to see what crawlers are doing, particularly Google crawler. You can also check in Google Search Console as a useful place to look as well. Looking for things that are crawled that shouldn't be, like search filters and those sort of query parameters. Those are typically not cached. So those will make the hosting slower or add more load to the hosting, slowing down everything, including the cart and checkout. So either caching those query strings so they're fast, or blocking them with the robots.txt file, adding disallows for those query strings. And those are two ways to kind of deal with those issues. But looking in the server logs and just trawling through and seeing what crawlers are doing And if there's errors happening, those are a good kind of way to kind of troubleshoot performance issues as well. Okay, so that's pretty much it. As I said, go to our website. There's more details here on this post. If you want help with site speed, there's a few different ways we can help you. We have, if you want us to do it for you, we have a free audit here. If you just fill out this form, go to our homepage, you fill out this form, one of our team will have a look at the website and come back to you with some recommendations. If you want to look at your Core Vitals, there is a free Core Vitals report here. There's no opt-in required. You need 50 to 100 visits a day to generate one. And you can generate one for your competitors too. You can see what's going on with their speed or your speed. And this report auto updates on the second Tuesday of each month, so you can generate it and get a good, it will update every month. You can set up email reports and all sorts of stuff. So it's a good high level way of checking site speed. And site speed, what we talked about, this is a good way. Again, no opt-in required. It takes about 90 seconds to run a test, and it will come back and give you kind of detailed insights as to what's going on with the site. So I hope you found that useful. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, post in the comment section, and happy to come back to you. Cheers.